Welcome to Silent Souls. Tonight's episode brings you 3 bone-chilling horror stories from the Appalachian Trail, where restless spirits and eerie whispers make the mountains a sleepless haunt. Perfect for those late nights when you're craving a scare. Before we start, please subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay haunted by every episode. The wind carried a tune that night, one I'd never heard before, like a hymn sung by voices too old to be human. My name is Sarah, and I took a job as a park ranger in the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia to escape the city and keep my daughter, Lily, in school after her dad left us. The Monongahela National Forest was my new home, a sprawling wilderness of dense woods, misty ridges, and trails that felt like they belonged to another time. Locals and Elkins whispered about the hollow, a valley where hikers vanished and strange songs echoed at night. I didn't believe in their stories. My life was about practical things, like paying bills and making sure Lily had a future. But what happened in that forest, in the rain-soaked dark of the hollow, made me quit the job and move us far away. It was late October, and the rain was constant, turning the trails to mud and the air heavy with the smell of wet pine. My job was to patrol the backcountry, check campsites, and make sure hikers didn't get lost. The forest was quiet most nights, just the rustle of leaves and the occasional owl, but my second week on the job felt different. The air was heavier, the shadows deeper, like the mountains were watching me. I was closing up the ranger station one night, around 1 a.m, when I heard a faint song, not quite human, drifting from the direction of the hollow. It was eerie, like a church hymn but wrong, the notes twisting in ways that made my skin crawl. I checked my radio, thinking maybe it was picking up interference, but it was off. The station silent, except for the rain on the tin roof. I grabbed my flashlight and headed out, figuring it was a camper playing music too loud. The trail to the hollow was steep, the mud sucking at my boots, the rain blurring my vision. The song got louder as I descended, clearer, like a choir of voices singing in a language I didn't know. I called out, "This is Ranger Sarah. Identify yourself." But the song didn't stop, just grew sharper, cutting through the storm. My flashlight caught something, a flicker of light, not a campfire, but pale, like moonlight, moving between the trees. I followed it, my heart pounding, thinking maybe a hiker was lost. The light led me deeper into the hollow, where the trees were twisted, their branches clawing at the sky. The song was everywhere now, vibrating in my chest, and I saw them shapes in the mist, human but not, their faces blurred, their eyes glowing faintly. They were singing, their mouths moving in unison, but the sound wasn't coming from them. It was in the air, in the ground, in me. I radioed bass, my voice shaking, but got only static. "Anyone there?" "I'm in the hollow," I said, but the static turned into a voice, not my supervisor, but a woman, old and raspy. "Sarah," she said, "you shouldn't have come." I hadn't told anyone my name on the radio that night. I turned it off, but the voice kept going, joined by others, chanting my name in time with the song. The shapes were closer now, circling me, their forms flickering like bad signals. I smelled at something old, like damp earth and decay, mixing with the rain. My flashlight flickered, then died, leaving me in darkness, except for those pale lights, moving faster, weaving through the trees. I ran, the mud slowing me, branches tearing at my jacket. The song was louder, angrier, and I felt something brush my neck, cold and wet, like fingers made of mist. I thought of Lily, her laugh, her drawings pinned to our fridge, and it kept me moving. The trail seemed to twist, looping back to the hollow, no matter which way I turned. The shapes were everywhere, their eyes glowing brighter, their song a scream now. I stumbled into a clearing, and there it was, a figure, taller than the others, standing on a rock, its face hidden in shadow. "Join us," it said, its voice the woman's from the radio, but louder inside my head. The ground shook, like something was waking up beneath it, and the trees bent inward, their branches reaching for me. The song was deafening, the voices pleading, "Stay, Sarah, stay." I saw them clearly, now men, women, children, their clothes old, like from a century ago, their faces pale and hollow. They reached for me, their hands passing through me, cold as ice, pulling at something deeper than my skin. I don't know how I got out. The rain stopped, the song faded, and I was on the trail, my flashlight back on, my radio silent. It was 5 a.m., dawn breaking through the mist. I made it back to the station, my hands trembling, my uniform soaked with mud and something darker, like ash. I checked the logs later hikers had gone missing in the hollow since the 1800s. Miners and settlers, mostly, never found. The locals said the forest took them, kept them for its song. I quit that day, packed up Lily, and moved to Charleston. I work at a grocery store now, far from the mountains. But when it rains, I hear it, the hymn, the voices, her raspy whisper. And sometimes, in the dark, I see those pale lights flickering at the edge of my vision, waiting for me to return to the hollow. A rusted pickaxe lay in the middle of the trail, as if someone had dropped it mid-swing and never came back. My name is Caleb, and I worked as a maintenance worker for a historic site in the Appalachian Mountains of eastern Tennessee, trying to keep my sister Rachel in college after our dad passed away. The job was at an old coal mine in the Smoky Mountains, shut down since the 1930s, but preserved as a tourist attraction. The locals in Gatlinburg told stories about the mine, how workers vanished in the tunnels, how strange faces appeared in the dark. I didn't believe in ghost stories. I was too busy worrying about bills and Rachel's tuition. But what happened in that mine on a rainy night in November 2024 made me quit and swear I'd never go near those mountains again. The Smoky Mountains are beautiful but eerie, with fog that clings to the valleys and trees that seem to whisper in the wind. The mine was a maze of tunnels, boarded up entrances, and rusted equipment surrounded by dense forest. My job was to maintain the trails, check the visitor center, and make sure the old mine shafts stayed sealed. The rain was constant that month, turning the paths to mud, and the air thick with the smell of wet earth and coal dust. My first week was uneventful, just fixing signs and clearing debris, but the mine always felt off. The air was too heavy, the shadows too deep, and sometimes I'd hear a faint clanging, like metal on stone, deep in the forest. On my 8th night, I was checking a trail near the main shaft when I saw it a rusted pickaxe, lying in the mud, fresh scratches on its handle, like it had been used recently. I looked around, my flashlight cutting through the rain, but the trail was empty. No footprints, no signs of anyone. I picked up the pickaxe, figuring a hiker dropped it, but it was heavy, colder than it should have been. As I carried it back to the visitor center, I heard it a low murmur, like voices talking just out of earshot, coming from the direction of the mine. I called out, "Anyone there?" But the murmur stopped, replaced by a sharp clank, like a pick hitting rock. My radio crackled, and a voice came through, not my boss Ellen, but a man, rough and old. "Caleb," it said, "come inside." I hadn't used my name on the radio, hadn't talked to anyone all night. I turned it off, but the voice kept going, louder, saying, "Caleb, we're waiting." The rain was heavier now, blurring my flashlight's beam, and I saw them faces in the fog, pale and blurred, staring from the trees. They weren't human, not really, their eyes too big, their mouths stretched wrong, like masks carved from bone. I dropped the pickaxe and ran, the mud slowing me, the voices following. The clanging was louder, echoing from the mine's entrance, a boarded-up shaft I'd checked a dozen times. I radioed Ellen, my hands shaking, but got only static. The faces were closer, their murmurs turning into a chant. "Caleb, come below." I reached the visitor center, locking the door, but the clanging didn't stop, and the faces were at the windows, their eyes glowing faintly, their hands pressing against the glass. I stayed inside until Ellen arrived at 4A, her truck skidding through the mud. "What's wrong with you?" she asked, seeing my face. I told her about the pickaxe, the voices, the faces, but she just shook her head. "Old minds play tricks," she said. "Stay away from the main shaft." But I couldn't quit. I needed the job for Rachel. The next night, it was worse. The clanging was constant, the voices louder, and I found more tools, hammers, shovels scattered on the trails, all scratched like the pickaxe. Hikers started reporting things. Shadows in the mine's entrance, whispers in the woods. One kid, a teenager on a school trip, said he saw a man in old miner's gear, his face half gone, staring from the shaft. On my last night, I was sealing a leak near the main shaft when the power went out, the visitor center plunging into darkness. The rain stopped, and the silence was worse, thick and suffocating. The clanging was deafening now, coming from inside the mine, and I heard footsteps, heavy and uneven, echoing in the tunnels. I grabbed my flashlight, but it flickered, showing glimpses of them, dozens of faces, lining the shaft's entrance, their eyes glowing, their mouths open in a silent scream. "Caleb, stay with us," they chanted, their voices a chorus in my head. The main figure, the man from the kid's story, stood at the entrance, his face charred, his eyes burning. "You belong here," he said, and I felt it a pull, like the mine was calling me inside. The ground shook, the boards cracking, and I smelled it coal dust and blood, choking me. The faces were everywhere, reaching, their hands cold and rough like stone. I ran, tripping over roots, the voices screaming now, the clanging like a heartbeat. I made it to my truck, the doors locked, but the faces were at the windows, their eyes locked on me. I drove, the mind fading in my rearview mirror, but I don't remember the road. I woke up in Gatlinburg, parked at a gas station, my hands covered in coal dust, my radio still off. I quit that morning, told Ellen I was done. She didn't argue, just said, "That's old Tom. Miner died in a collapse in '33. They say he's still digging, looking for company." I moved Rachel to a community college in Knoxville and got a job at a hardware store. But when it rains, I hear it, the clanging, the voices, the chant. And sometimes, in the dark, I see those faces, staring from the shadows, waiting for me to go back to the mine. A single lantern flickered in the distance, swinging gently, as if someone was holding it just beyond the trees. My name is Lauren, and I took a job as a caretaker for a string of rental cabins in the Appalachian Mountains of western North Carolina to keep my son, Ethan, in therapy after his father's death in a car accident. The cabins were nestled in the Pisgah National Forest, a place of towering pines, foggy valleys, and trails that seemed to lead nowhere. Locals in Asheville whispered about the lost cabin, a shack deep in the woods where guests disappeared and strange lights were seen at night. I didn't believe in their tales. Grief had taught me that real pain didn't need ghosts to hurt. But what happened in that forest on a rainy night in December 2024 made me abandon the job and move as far from those mountains. The Pisgah was hauntingly beautiful, its ridges shrouded in mist, its air thick with the scent of damp moss. My job was to clean cabins, restock supplies, and check on guests, mostly hikers and tourists looking for a quiet getaway. The rain was relentless that winter, turning the dirt roads to sludge and the forest into a maze of shadows. My first week was routine, just scrubbing floors and fixing leaks, but the forest felt alive, like it was watching me. On my 10th night, I was driving to cabin 7, the farthest out, to check a reported power flicker. The rain was heavy, my truck's wipers struggling, and the road was barely visible through the fog. That's when I saw a lantern, glowing faintly, swinging in the woods like someone was walking with it. I slowed down, thinking it was a lost guest, but the light moved deeper into the trees, away from any trail, I called out, "Hello? Need help?" But the rain drowned my voice, and the lantern vanished. I reached cabin 7, a small shack surrounded by pines, and found it empty. The power fine, but the air inside cold, like a freezer. My radio crackled as I checked the fuse box, and a voice came through, not my supervisor, Mike, but a woman, soft and pleading. "Lauren," she said, "find us." I hadn't used my name on the radio, hadn't spoken to anyone that night. I turned it off, but the voice kept going, joined by others, whispering, "Lauren, come to the cabin." The rain was louder now, pounding the roof, and I heard it a creak, like footsteps on the porch. I grabbed my flashlight, my hands shaking, and shone it outside. The lantern was there, swinging in the yard, but no one was holding it. It floated, moving toward the woods, and I saw them shapes in the fog, human but wrong, their faces pale, their eyes dark and hollow. They were watching me, their heads tilted, their mouths moving like they were speaking. But all I heard was the radio's chant. I locked the cabin door, my heart racing, and radioed Mike, but got only static. The shapes were closer, their forms flickering in the rain, and the lantern was at the window now, its light casting shadows that moved on their own. The air smelled of wet wood and something sour, like old blood. I thought of Ethan, his quiet strength in therapy, and it kept me from running into the dark. The next night, it was worse. The lantern appeared on every trail, always leading to the same spot of clearing where the lost cabin was supposed to be, a place not on any map. Guests started complaining, saying they heard voices in their cabins, saw lights in the woods. One hiker, a college kid, said he saw a woman in a tattered dress holding a lantern, staring from the trees. On my last night, I was cleaning cabin 7 when the power went out, the room plunging into darkness. The rain stopped, and the silence was heavy, like a weight on my chest. The lantern appeared outside, brighter now, and the voices were louder, coming from inside the cabin. "Lauren, you're here," they said, and I saw them faces in the windows, pressed against the glass, their eyes empty, their hands clawing at the wood. I ran to the door, but it wouldn't open, the lock jammed. The lantern was inside now, floating in the corner, and the woman was there, her dress burned, her face half gone, her eyes locked on me. "Stay with us," she said, her voice echoing in my skull. The shapes were everywhere, filling the cabin, their hands reaching, cold and wet, pulling at me. The floor shook, like the forest was swallowing the cabin, and I felt it a tug, not just on my body but my mind, like they wanted me to stay forever. I don't know how I escaped. The door gave way, and I was in my truck, driving through the rain, the lantern fading in my rearview mirror. It was dawn when I reached the ranger station, my clothes soaked, my hands covered in ash. Mike found me, said I'd been gone all night, but I don't remember the hours. I quit that day, moved Ethan to a new therapist in Raleigh, and got a job at a diner. Locals said the lost cabin was real, a place where a family burned in the 1920s, their spirits trapped, looking for others to join them. I don't go near the mountains anymore, but when it rains, I hear them, the voices, the creaking, her plea. And sometimes in the dark, I see the lantern swinging just beyond my window, waiting for me to follow.